So when I was growing up, I had a friend. We kind of knew each other through childhood, so we weren't best of friends, but we had a history together. And in high school, we drove into senior year. We drove into school together. One week I'd drive my 1974 Ford Elite that my brother and I had from our uncle, and then Brian would drive in his more modern diesel. It was a VW Rabbit, I think, at the time. I don't even know if they still exist. Anyhow, it was a diesel, so you could hear it. And I remember one brutally cold winter, and he didn't fill it up all the way, and there was concern that diesel had frozen. Anyhow, Brian, he was in his high school years. He was a big Grateful Dead fan. But he listened to the bootleg tapes. This was in the 80s, and the bootleg tapes were, not the albums. I knew the Grateful Dead, and I liked the Grateful Dead, but not because I went to the concerts, because I liked their albums. Working Man's Dead, I really bonded with. There's American Beauty, Dancing in the Streets. I kind of liked that album for some reason. But by far my favorite was Terrapin Station. Just trying to decode Terrapin Station, and it was one of these albums that every song was tied together, and in the end, especially side B, Terrapin Station, it's about really dying. Terrapin Station, it's about passing through one to life, and it takes place at a campfire. It's kind of an album that's modeled as a campfire shanty in a way. Maybe that's why I like it so much, but it's the last song on the first side, A, that I like so much, Sunrise, that leads into Terrapin Station, and what is just a magnificent listen that is. I've listened to that so many times, and it's just so transcendent lyrically and musically. Anyhow, Brian listened to the bootleg tapes, and he was always having, I guess he and his brother, they collected the anthology, and they knew. Well, I remember one time Brian was listening to Ripple, and it was a special performance of Ripple, or Box of Rain maybe, some song that they never played live for some reason. Anyhow, he knew all the songs and all the lyrics, and I've always liked the Grateful Dead. They're just the whole vibe. Anyhow, Brian's, for me growing up, he was kind of the embodiment of like outdoors. He was brought up, his father's name was Bob, and then his two older brothers, and Brian was the third, the youngest, but he might have been maybe the most accomplished outdoorsman. Anyhow, I remember Christmas, he got a crossbow, or I think they got a rifle, he get different fishing gear, and camouflage boots and stuff like that, and they go on these trips, big trips. If I went into nature, it was walking to Horse Hill, but they'd go into Canada, and I don't even know where they went, but his father it was an anomaly in the neighborhood. He had a Wagoneer, one of those Wagoneers with the kind of plaid paneling. I don't even know how to describe it. Anyhow, nobody had a four-wheel drive vehicle. Everybody had a sedan. You only had a truck or something like that if you were an outdoorsman or you worked in construction. So for them to have a Wagoneer, and I remember there was an epic blizzard, and we had to stay home from school. I was all like 7 or 8, but my dad was able to hitch a ride into Baltimore because Brian's father, Bob, worked for IBM. That was a big deal. He worked for IBM in Baltimore, and he was able to hitch a ride in because he had four-wheel drive, and they were just adults. They didn't have any snow days, and that was just a generational thing or something. I don't know. But anyhow, what is my point here is that Bob the Third was not written. It was written for Bob Thomas. He was a wildlife biologist. This was over 15 years ago, who really was just at the preserve for a short time. And I remember I came up with this song really on the spot. Maybe it was a day or two or three that I thought about it and wrote it. But the song clicks like a puzzle, together like a puzzle. And it's about someone who's, it's maybe more, it's more cerebral of a song than David Moody Blues, which is kind of in the similar motif, telling the story of someone in the initial phase of their career and then embarking on the journey of life. For Bob III, it's this person maybe of a similar mindset, but it's more cerebral. He's thinking about these things, coming to terms or grappling with maybe the idealism of the teenage years in terms of seeing nature, but confronting the adult world of nature being spoiled or corrupted, but then also there being kind of a hope in there, and each little vignette unfolding like a puzzle that just clicks together in an abstract way. So anyhow, Bob Thomas, I remember after I performed this song, and it was really ad hoc, or not ad hoc, but very quickly at a picnic table because we didn't have a bunch of, and he had a job waiting for him in Central Florida, I think, and he really did, and he was here for a solid 2 or 3 years. He said he couldn't turn down the chance to work on the Florida Panther program. He felt like that was really important for the long-term arc of his career. And I remember after I sang the song, the girlfriend was down here with him, and they're a very nice couple. He came up to me and he said, "That's so meaningful. I'm actually Bob III." He had a grandfather and a father who were also Bobs. So the way the song is kind of, there goes Bob III, there goes Bob cubed. It resonated in a way coincidence makes its connections. So Bob Thomas, I haven't really spoken to him since, but he reminded me of a lot of Brian Hubeck. And Brian Hubeck was, for me as a kid, he embodied this kind of mysterious. I was always in awe of the outdoor adventures he went on with his father and his brothers, and it was on a scale that I could never imagine, and always, I don't know, it captured something in my imagination. And senior year in high school, Brian and I drove into school together, and I remember when he was driving his VW Rabbit, the thing, the diesel engine, he was always hunched over the wheel looking at birds, and I could never see these birds. I wasn't the birder, he was. He could just see birds, and that was more important to him than anything. And one day we were driving into work, and I was kind of tired and groggy, and I turned and I saw this giant bird on a branch. It was in the fall, and it was, all the leaves were gone. I said, "Brian, look." I was all excited, "A bird." And he turned to me and just started laughing. He said, "Bob, that's a red-shouldered hawk." "A bird?" Oh, God. So we laughed about that probably too many times to count. And he was just, I always enjoyed riding into school with Brian. He was kind of cool. He was laid back. And he didn't suffer any pretense. I remember that. And he was just like taking people for who they were, and he's one of these people. We were in kind of different cliques, but he was not really in any clique. I don't think I was in a clique either, but he was, everybody really liked and admired Brian, and he was a great athlete too. And I'll never, he could hit a baseball a country mile. He just knew how to leverage his full force into a baseball. And a very dynamic player too, although in high school he was dogged by knee issues that I think he resolved, and he's a really accomplished golfer today, or he was just a very good athlete, and his brothers were too. And final story, I'd never forget, 11-12 basketball, we were playing a championship game, and we ended up losing the championship game. It was a travel team. Brian and I were on the same team. It was probably the peak of my basketball career. And at that point, I was a starter. And I, maybe pridefully like clung to that in a way that maybe pretentious is the word or something. I don't know. Anyhow, I remember our coach Phil Robb, when it came time to get the second place trophies, he said, "Okay, starters get first, and then you sit first, and Brian I remember had a very good game that game, and I said to Brian, I think I should sit before you, and he just looked at me and he said, "Does it really matter? We lost a stupid game." And he just kind of said it out of frustration, but truthfulness. And wow, that taught me a lesson. And I was like, wow, yeah, what am I doing being so pretentious? And I'll never forget that. I think partly because it shocked me, and partly because I felt like such a jackass, because it's about the team, right? And we all learn stupid lessons like that in life, and that's what high school is all about. And you think about that around the campfire, and lives, past and present kind of morph together around the campfire. And I think that's what happened with Bob Thomas and Brian Hubeck in a weird way with this song. Although the song was about Bob Thomas, it's not until the retelling that I really kind of came to me that, I remember he'd always reminded me for some reason of Brian Hubeck. Anyhow, crazy campfire, I tell you.